So I didn't get my rental deposit back after 4 years and 2 months of living at my very first apartment here in Merida. And here's my story. Hello friends, welcome back. For those watching me for the very first time, my name is Adiola and I'm a Nigerian living here in Merida, Yucatan, Mexico, where I share my experiences about life here in Merida as a single woman, and I can also add as a single black woman as well. Now, today's video will be about what happened between me and my previous landlady and why I didn't get my rental deposit back. So I read a lot in the expat groups about people asking about whether or not they're gonna get their rental deposit back, and most of the comments have 50-50. About 50% of the people usually get their money back, and about the other 50% they never get their rental deposit back. And it doesn't matter how nice they were, how nice the owners were. For some reason 50% of the renters were unfortunate, and I was a part of that 50% group. So here's what happened. In December 2020, towards the end of the year, like around Christmas, I found this place on Facebook Marketplace. I saw about 3 properties in the Miguel Aleman neighborhood, and eventually I found my apartment in the Jesus Carranza neighborhood. And yeah, I signed it, and then they gave me the keys, and I moved in on the 2nd. Well, I moved in January, because when I moved in the apartment, so in December of 2020, around Christmas time, I was looking for a place to rent here in Merida, because then I had decided to stay in Merida, even though I was supposed to only stay in Merida for a month and then now go to Cancun to go take my flight back to Medellin. But Merida was quite quiet and laid back, and it seemed very tranquil at that point. So I thought, okay, let me spend some time here and work on a few things, and then eventually maybe go back to Medellin. And also this was during the pandemic era. So I went and then I found 1 or 2 properties on Facebook Marketplace, and then I went with an agent. Well, they actually, so it turned out to be notary and an agent, which is very weird, because usually agents and notaries are completely different. But this guy apparently is a notary and is also an agent. He shows properties for some reason. So I went with him and his assistant, and they drove me to about 3 or 4 properties. Some properties in Miguel Aleman, and then the last property in Jesus Carranza, which is where I ended up moving into. So my rent then, because it was a 1-bedroom apartment and it was December pandemic, I don't know how long that apartment had been empty for. So and then it was furnished, well, basic furnitures. So, and then it was listed at 5,500 pesos, but I was trying to negotiate the contract fee, because I'm like, why am I paying a whole rent for just some sheet of papers, right? Why am I paying you 5,500 pesos for just a contract fee? So I was trying to negotiate, and I think there was like lost in communication, and so the notary's assistant was like, oh, you can pay 5,000 pesos, right, for your rent. I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, and then they were like, you will pay us 4 months rent. Your first month's rent, 1 month rent for the contract, and then the 2 month rent for a deposit. And then again, I was like, oh, that's kind of a lot for me right now, because then during the pandemic, you can actually use that script. It's kind of a lot for me right now, this and this and that. And then they were like, okay, maybe you can pay 3 months rent, just 1 month deposit. And then they drove me to the owner's house because they lived very close to the apartment. And then I met him because they're actually a couple, but I only met the husband. They're much older, seniors. And then he was like, hola, nice to meet you, da da da. Are you gonna go with the apartment? I said yes. And he was okay with the 3 months rent. Well, at least just the 1 month deposit, because the other month will go to the notary. Well, at least I think. Who knows? Maybe they get some of that back. So yeah, and then I was okay. We can meet up to sign the contract, and then I went and then I met up with them at that apartment, well, my apartment, and then they went over the contract all in Spanish. I probably only understood maybe 40%, but anyway. Signed the contract, and then they were like, we need to stamp and seal. You can always come back to our office or we'll deliver it. I don't even know, but I think eventually they delivered it after a month, who knows. So yeah, I paid my 3 month rent, 15,000 pesos, first month rent, contract fee, and then the 1 month deposit. Now, if you're gonna rent in Merida, I would suggest and advise only paying for 1 month rent deposit, because what's going to happen is that if you are part of the 50% who might not get their deposit back, then that means you're going to lose 2 months rent. You're going to lose a lot, especially if your rent is in the high end. High end will be anything over 12,000 pesos. That's like high end, right? Because most of the locals, they live like even 5,000 pesos and below. If you have a little bit of money, maybe 9,000. But most of the locals, they're not paying that much in rent. So high end will be like 12,000 and above. So if your rent is in the 5 digits and above, so 10,000 and above, let's say, I would say try to negotiate that 2 months rent deposit to 1. Now, if the apartment has been empty for a while, which might be the case, especially since I said 10,000 pesos and above is in the high end, to you, if you're thinking in US dollars, you're thinking, oh, that's in the low end, that's very cheap. But remember, we're not in the US, we are here in Mexico, especially here in Merida, where they earn one of the lowest salary all over the country. So yeah, the state of Yucatan and Chiapas, they don't earn as much as their colleagues in the central of Mexico as well as the north of Mexico. So that's why cost of living is lower, rent is lower here, even though it's going up bit by bit. Anyway, that's besides the point. So if your rent is in the 5 digits and above, so 10,000 pesos and above, I'll recommend negotiating that 2 month rent deposit into just 1. So that if anything happens, they don't give you your money back. At least you know that you've only lost 10,000 pesos, you've only lost 15,000 pesos. Now, if it's anything above 15,000 pesos, I would say, like, don't let it go that easily, because that's a lot of money. Like, just try to find a way to get at least some of your money back. But if you're going to be paying them 2 months rent in deposit, like, let's say you're paying like 15,000 pesos per month, that's 30,000 pesos. And they don't give you your money back, then yeah, that's gonna be a lot of issue, because now, you probably might need that money to go rent the next place if you decide to stay here in Merida, or even if you're gonna be moving to a different country, that's still some money you can use towards your travel expenses and moving expenses. And also for the contract fee, if your rent is usually over 8,000 pesos, 9,000 pesos, getting close to that 5 digits figure, usually they will give you a contract fee, like 3,000 pesos for the contract fee, 5,000 pesos for the contract fee, 6,000 pesos for the contract fee, even though that's very ridiculous, right? So you want to negotiate the 2 months rent deposit as well as the contract fee. Some landlords are reasonable. Some landlords are not money hungry, they're comfortable, they're doing well. So they're just gonna be like, okay, we know a legal team that only charges 3,000 pesos, that only charges 5,000 pesos, so you pay directly to them. Some landlords are very greedy. Like one time I was thinking of moving and I was dealing directly with the owner, and he was still asking me for 1 month rent for the contract fee. And I think the rent then was 10,000 pesos, because this was in 2022, late 2021. I was looking to move in 2022, so it was still a little bit around pandemic era, but this guy was still asking for 4 months rent, including 1 month rent for the contract fee. I was just like, bye. So it depends on the landlord, and also depends on how long the property has been empty for, right? If it has been empty for over 3 months, maybe they only get 2 viewings per week or something like that, then they might be more flexible when it comes to negotiation. So going back to my case, so anyway, I paid everything. I moved in January 2021, and then I was supposed to move out. Every year I will tell myself, okay, I'm moving out to a house somewhere more comfortable, bigger, more privacy, but I just stayed there because when I was looking for a place, I didn't really find what I was looking for, especially in an area close to Central, because then I was biking everywhere, so I wanted to be as close as possible to Central. Anyway, and then I was having issues with the house, getting scammed, and then putting the project on hold because I was supposed to be done with the construction and everything in 2023, right? So meaning 2024, I should have moved in already. So anyway, I stayed in that property for 4 years and 2 months, so 50 months in total. 50 months in total. And it got to a point that I was getting anxious because I have never stayed in a place for that long throughout my adult years. Because usually I will rent a room in a house, and then every year usually I will just move out because I found a better place. It's slightly cheaper, it's bigger, more comfortable, it's closer to my school, what have you. And I didn't have a lot of stuff then because I was only renting a 1 room, right? So it was mainly just my stuff. Usually they were furnished, so it's just a matter of packing up my clothes, shoes, some pots and pans, and that was it. So I'm so used to moving every year, maximum 2 years. So I was getting anxious at this place, and also living in an apartment, living on the 2nd floor. I just wanted a change, but I couldn't really go anywhere because I was dealing with the legal case for this property, which I will make a video on. So now, and then, to finish the project, it was also taking a while. But then eventually, February 28th, I was like, I'm not even going to spend another month in this place because the money I'm spending at this place, I can use it to continue to work on my house because the house wasn't done when I moved in and it's still not done. I did a video tour of the property, so you can see that the property really wasn't done when I moved in. So no issues with the landlords. They were quite good because one thing I loved about them was that anytime there was an issue with the house, I would send the wife a message. So the husband had a flip phone, and then so you couldn't message him on WhatsApp, but eventually he got a smartphone, but still he didn't have WhatsApp. He doesn't really use technology like that. I believe he's 80 years old or something, so usually you will message the wife who uses WhatsApp and such, and then she will now tell the husband, and the husband will bring workers in to fix, right? So they will fix everything. But in my third year they were like, oh, actually we're gonna make you pay for half of the repairs and we pay the other half. So, and then guess what, after that everything was working perfectly in my house. But at the beginning though, there were a few things that needed to be done, but that was it. So come February, I was okay, this is gonna be my last month here because I was supposed to move out December 2024, but I told the landlady that, hey, I had just come out of surgery, so right now I can't move, I can't pack, I can't lift heavy stuff, so if I can stay for a month or so. She was like, you know what, let me give you 2 months just in case of anything, and you can always let me know. So so she was very accommodating and such, and very kind and such. All throughout the 4 years plus that I stayed at their property, everything went well. But when I moved out, she completely switched, which I'm still trying to figure out exactly what happened. So I moved out, and then notary came back, which again, I'm like, why is this guy here? Why is this guy here, for crying out loud? So the notary came back with his assistant, and they came to view the apartment, see the state the apartment was in, and then determine if I was worthy of my 5,000 pesos deposit. And the guy just looked around and was like, yeah, no, we're not gonna give you any money back because we have to paint. And the thing is, the landlord, so the husband, such a nice person, kind soul, and even he was telling me, okay, we'll give you 2,000 pesos because it would cost maybe 3,000 pesos to go buy the paint and then hire workers to just come paint, because I was only living in a 1-bedroom apartment. So it wasn't a house, it wasn't a big apartment, just the living room, kitchen area, and the bedroom and the bathroom. But the notary kept insisting that no, it would cost the whole 5,000 pesos to paint this place and to fix it back up. And then I looked at the assistant. The assistant was like, oh, actually, in your contract, it says that when you move out, you should put the apartment back in the same state that you met it. I was like, listen, I've been living here for 4 years, and it was just me. It wasn't like I was living with kids or living with the pet, living with, someone who will cause damages on the property. It was just paint. They were like, yeah, but your contract says the house should be in the exact same state. It should look in the exact same state. And I was thinking that, okay, this property is now 4 years older than what I met it 4 years ago. So you're telling me that, the property should be in the same state, like the plumbing system, electricity system, everything is in the same state that I met it 4 years ago, right? But apparently here in Merida, the reason why many landlords do not give the deposit back is that they are trying to get the apartment to be in the same state that you met it a year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. Whenever you move out, the property should be in the same state. So if you're gonna move out, paint, fix anything, make sure everything looks good. So that's why some people will take videos before moving in, send it to the landlord with the timestamps, and then when they move out, they try to clean it and then take another video. But the thing is, in most cases, it doesn't work that way. The landlords, they've already spent your money. They've already spent your money. They don't have it. They're not gonna give it back to you unless you are paying a lot in rent. Then that's where you might contest it. You might try to report them to the police and so on and so forth. But in many cases, people like myself who weren't paying so much in rent, just let it go. Now, my rent actually went up twice. It went up from 5,000 pesos to 5,500 pesos in 2023. So 2021, 2022, I paid 5,000 pesos. And in 2023, I was paying 5,500 pesos, and I had to pay 3,000 pesos to renew my contract, because apparently, they charge you every year for a new contract. Yes. And then in 2025, she was like, okay, now your rent is going up again to 6,000 pesos. But I was like, whatever, I'm only here for 2 more months. So I didn't even contest it. I was just like, whatever. Because before, she wanted to increase my rent from 5,000 pesos to 6,000 pesos. And I was like, according to the law, the rent, should only be raised by a maximum of 10%, not 20% that you're trying to raise it. She was like, okay, fine. Then 5,500 pesos. So I paid that. I paid that for 2 more years. And then 2025, I was paying 6,000 pesos. So I paid 6,000 pesos in January and then in February. So now, time to move out. The notary was like, nope, we're not gonna give you any money back. They didn't give me any money back. It wasn't because there were damages, nothing. It was just regular wear and tear. Somebody lived in that property for 4 years, and then the landlord was trying to tell me that, oh, by the way, this other lady next door to you, when she moved out, she also paid me to paint the apartment. But I was thinking to myself that, of course, she had a pet, she had a dog, and the dog actually left a lot of paw prints and stains on the wall, so it'll make sense. But I just thought, wow, because when that lady moved out, she actually upgraded the house. Like, she added some cabinet to the kitchen, she added some shelves in the bedroom closet, and so on and so forth. But they still charge her for painting. But So the landlady switching on me after moving out also wasn't a surprise, because about in 2022, one of my neighbors, so in the apartments, next to me, because we only had 4 apartments in the whole building, 2 downstairs, 2 upstairs. So my next door neighbor on the same level, so there were 2 girls studying medicine, and so they were actually doing their residency at a hospital that was just 3 blocks away from that building. So one of them had passed on, and so the roommate now had to move out because it was such a tragedy for her, and so she couldn't continue to live in that building, in that apartment, right? Considering what had happened to her roommate, colleague, so on and so forth. So she had to move out, and guess what? This woman didn't refund this girl's deposit. Like, to me, I was just like, wow, like, she didn't decide to move out for personal reasons, but she moved out for reasons that was very sad and very shocking to everybody in that building. What happened to that girl actually made it on the news. The police came over to the building, they did some investigation, they interviewed people and so on and so forth, but he wouldn't even refund this young girl's deposit. And she was studying medicine. It wasn't like she was earning a lot of money. It wasn't like she was, she was from a wealthy family. Maybe she was, who knows, right? But I was like, at least you will make an exception for her, right? Like, okay, you know what? I'm so sorry for what happened to you. Here's your money back. I hope you find a good place, a comfortable place. Here you go. But this woman and the notary guy didn't refund this girl's money back because she was moving out before the lease had expired. Because I think what happened to her colleague happened, like, I think in the 8th month, right? So it wasn't up to a year, and so she obviously had to move out. But the landlady didn't give her money back. So that's sometimes when it comes to human relationships, it's always good to know like the good and the bad side of people. So when this landlady switched on me when I moved out, like her and the notary didn't give me back my money, I wasn't that surprised because I remembered what they did to this other girl like 3 years ago, right? So I was just like, well, I mean, that's the kind of people they are. But it's very sad because you're thinking, okay, these people are not poor. They live in very large, big, comfortable homes. They drive comfortable cars. They're doing well. You have other tenants still paying you rent, and you can easily find someone to take over that girl's apartment, take over the lease. Maybe they might lose just 1 month rent, which I'm like, for you guys, I mean, but yeah, yes, I was quite shocked. I was quite surprised. So yeah, that's pretty much what happened from the time that I found the apartment to the time that I paid, moved in. No issues with my neighbors. We all got along well. There was one apartment that people were moving in and out of every year, right? We had new tenants, but when I moved out, there was one girl living in that apartment, but I think she stayed more than a year. So I actually left her. I left her when I was leaving. But yeah, it was myself. There was another neighbor. I think we moved in the same month. So 4 years we've been living there. But when I moved out, I found out that I was paying the least actually. So maybe that's why the landlord had a resentment for me, which I was like, I don't understand. I was paying, I think, 6,000 by the time I moved out. My other neighbors with the 2 bedrooms were paying 10,000 pesos apparently for a 2-bedroom apartment. I was like, wow, this is ridiculous. Like, why did you guys even stay? Like, you guys accepted to be gentrified. But the weird thing was that I was the only non-Mexican the whole time that I lived in that building. Everyone else were Mexicans, but not from Yucatan, because no Yucatecan will pay such high rent. Even my 6,000 pesos that I was paying, you could rent a house for 6,000 pesos somewhere else, not even in the south, because people always think that, oh, only in the south. No, you go out to the west a little bit, like the Pensiones, Chancu area, even Tribuna, you can find a small house for 6,000 pesos. Now, talk less of a basic 2-bedroom apartment for 10,000 pesos. I was alarmed. I was appalled. Like, what? You guys accepted this? Because what happened was they were increasing rent bit by bit. But yeah, one of my neighbors usually will rent out his other bedroom, out. But I was shocked. So I'm thinking maybe that's why this woman had a resentment towards me, because I was paying the least in rent. Still, I'm just like, you're not poor, you're not broke. And also, I was a good tenant. I was paying my rent on time. Some days I would pay 2 months rent at a time. Some days when I'm not around, I will send them a code to go take out the rent. I wasn't a nuisance. They didn't have to kick me out because I was damaging the property, or because the other neighbors were complaining about me, or because I wasn't paying rent. Like, I moved out of my own free will, and I was paying my own rent on time. But these people, they don't care. At the end of the day, they can choose to give you your rental deposit back or not. And sometimes the reason why they don't give you, well, sometimes they might not give you the full amount. They might only give you, let's say, half of it, because they have to go paint. They have to go fix this and fix that, because, like I said, the agreement is when you move out, the property should be in the exact same state that you met it. And also, sometimes the light bill, the CFE light bill comes every 2 months. So let's say you had just paid, the last bill, and then 2 months later, the next bill now comes in. Now they need to be able to pay the bill, right? So, and sometimes they might look at your CFE bill, look at, okay, on average, how much do you usually spend on electricity? Okay, 2,000 pesos every 2 months, 3,000 pesos every 3 months, 500 pesos every 2 months. Then they might, make an estimate of that, maybe plus or minus, mostly plus, and then they will deduct that from your rent. So it's very unlikely that you will get 100% of your deposit back. If you do, then that means that landlord is probably running a charity program, or that landlord isn't that money hungry, or the landlord was overcharging you in the first place. So I've heard of a case whereby, like, a next door neighbor was paying, I think, 7,000 pesos, and then those expats were paying 15,000 pesos. They were paying like double what the next door neighbor was paying. So if your landlord gave you 100% of your rent back, it means that they overcharge you the whole time you were there. So really, they've already made their money back. It doesn't matter if your CFE bill came out to be 4,000 pesos. They got it. They got it. So yeah, that's it for this video. And in the next video, I'm going to do a part 2 series of what happened between me and the landlady a month after I moved out. And I'm going to be sharing some receipts, conversations between myself and herself a month after I moved out. Yes. All right. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do click on the subscribe button to be subscribed to the channel. Or if you're watching me for the first time and you're feeling like, not convinced yet, maybe you can be convinced enough to just press the like button, and then the next time you can now click on the subscribe button. But yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.